The boy screamed, not with sound, with his eyes. Eli Carter dropped to his knees in the school bathroom, shaking, one hand pressed to his ear. His mouth opened in terror as his chest heaved like he was drowning. No one had ever seen him react like this. He had been deaf since birth. Doctors said he would never hear. But now, a thin piece of black metal lay on the wet bathroom floor. Jamal Reed stood frozen, staring at it in his palm. "I didn't mean to," he whispered. Eli grabbed his shirt, eyes wild. Then, for the first time in his life, Eli heard something, a sound so sharp it made him cry, a sound so real it broke him. Footsteps rushed toward the bathroom. Jamal looked at the door. Someone was coming, and whoever put that thing inside Eli's ear was about to lose everything. 3 hours earlier, the city of Chicago was waking up in gold. Glass towers caught the sunrise. Black cars moved silently through rich neighborhoods. Men in suits checked watches that cost more than most people's houses. In the top floor of a building overlooking Lake Michigan, Richard Carter stood in front of a wall of windows and watched his son draw. Eli sat on the floor with colored pencils, his back straight, his tongue slightly out in focus. He drew what he always drew. People with mouths open, people with no sound. Richard's chest tightened. Eli was 9 years old and had never heard his father's voice. Not once. Doctors called it congenital profound deafness. Richard called it the one thing money couldn't fix. He had tried everything. Private hospitals in Boston, specialists in New York, experimental trials in California, European experts flown in like royalty, millions spent, hope bought and broken again and again. Every doctor ended the same way. "I'm sorry, Mr. Carter. We've done all we can." Richard didn't accept all. He built companies from nothing. He bought problems and broke them. But his son? His son remained silent. Richard walked to Eli and knelt. He touched his chest, and then his own, the sign they had created for love. Eli smiled. That smile could break a man. A phone buzzed in Richard's pocket. A text from his assistant. School called. Something unusual happened. Richard's heart dropped. Eli went to a special program that mixed hearing and deaf children. Richard wanted him to live in both worlds. That morning, Eli had walked in holding his backpack like always. Calm, quiet, strong. And Jamal Reed had been watching him. Jamal was 10. He lived with his mother and 2 little sisters in a small apartment on the south side. His shoes were always a little too small. His backpack had a broken zipper. But his eyes? They missed nothing. Jamal noticed patterns, noticed faces, noticed when something felt wrong. He had noticed Eli weeks ago, not because he was deaf, but because he always touched his right ear, just slightly, like it bothered him. Jamal sat next to Eli in art class. They didn't talk. They didn't need to. They drew. Eli drew silent mouths. Jamal drew eyes. Big ones. Watching. That day, Eli kept rubbing his ear more than usual. His face looked tight, like something hurt. Jamal leaned closer. He saw something dark behind Eli's ear. Not skin, not hair, something else. Something that didn't belong. Jamal pointed. Eli looked confused. Jamal mimed, pulling something out. Eli shook his head. He'd learned to trust adults more than kids. But the pain grew. His eyes watered. During lunch, Eli rushed to the bathroom. Jamal followed. Inside the empty bathroom, Eli leaned over the sink, breathing hard. Jamal stepped close. He gently moved Eli's hair and saw it clearly. A tiny black piece, pressed just inside the ear canal, hidden perfectly. Jamal swallowed. "That ain't normal," he whispered. He washed his hands, dried them carefully. His hands shook. Eli watched him in the mirror, scared. Jamal slowly reached toward Eli's ear. Eli flinched. Jamal touched his own ear, then his heart. The sign for trust. Eli hesitated, then nodded. Jamal pinched the edge of the black object and pulled. That was when Eli collapsed and screamed without sound. That was when everything changed. Richard Carter arrived at the school in under 10 minutes. Security cars, sirens, panic. He pushed through halls until he saw his son sitting on the floor, pale, shaking, surrounded by teachers. Jamal stood near the wall, shaking harder. On a table sat a tiny black object in a tissue. Richard dropped to his knees and pulled Eli into his arms. Doctors were called. Police were called. Questions flew like knives. What is that? Who touched him? Was it an accident? Jamal raised his hand slowly. I took it out, he said. Teachers turned. Police stared. Richard looked at him. Why? Richard asked. Jamal swallowed. Because it wasn't supposed to be there. Silence filled the room. A doctor arrived and examined Eli quickly, then froze. This, he whispered. This is not medical equipment. Richard's heart stopped. What is it? The doctor looked up slowly. A sound-blocking implant. Crude. Illegal. Designed to interfere with hearing signals. Richard felt dizzy. You're telling me my son wasn't just deaf? The doctor nodded. Someone made sure he stayed that way. The room went cold. Richard's mind flashed through every nurse, every doctor, every family member, every trusted face. Someone had done this. On purpose. He looked at Jamal, the poor boy who saw what money missed. Son, Richard said softly, you may have just saved my child. Jamal looked down. I just saw something wrong. Police took the object. Doctors rushed Eli to the hospital. Richard rode in the ambulance, holding his son's hand, watching his chest rise and fall. For the first time in 9 years, hope felt dangerous. Because hope meant someone had stolen something from his child, and Richard Carter was about to find out who. Outside, Jamal watched the ambulance leave. He didn't smile. He didn't celebrate. He felt something heavy. Because he knew one thing. Whoever put that thing in Eli's ear was powerful. And people like Jamal, they didn't usually survive the truth. Jamal didn't go home that day. A woman from the school called his mother and told her what happened. His mother cried on the phone, not because Jamal was in trouble, but because powerful people were now asking about her son. Power always scared her. Jamal sat in the back of a black car that smelled like leather and money. He kept his hands on his knees, so no one would think he wanted anything. Outside the window, Chicago moved fast. Inside the car, everything felt slow. A man in a dark suit sat beside him. Not police, not teacher. Your name is Jamal Reed, right? The man asked. Jamal nodded. You're not in trouble, the man said. You helped someone important. Jamal looked down. I just saw something wrong. The man studied him like he was a puzzle. At the hospital, lights burned white. Doctors rushed Eli through halls. Richard followed, his face sharp with fear. He didn't let go of Eli's hand until they forced him to. Jamal stood near the wall, invisible again. But Richard noticed. He walked over and knelt in front of Jamal. What you did today, Richard said. No amount of money could have done. Jamal shrugged. I just looked. Richard swallowed hard. Sometimes that's everything. Tests took hours. Doctors whispered. Machines beeped like nervous hearts. Finally, one doctor came out. We removed the device completely, she said. There is damage. But there's also something else. Richard stood so fast his chair fell. What? There are signs his hearing nerves were being blocked artificially. Now that it's gone, there's a chance. A chance? Richard whispered. A small one, she said, but real. Jamal didn't understand the words, but he understood the faces. Hope was dangerous again. They let Jamal see Eli that night. Eli lay in a bed with wires on his head. His eyes lit up when he saw Jamal. Jamal smiled, small and awkward. He touched his chest, then Eli's. Their sign for friend. Eli copied him. Jamal pulled a pencil from his pocket and wrote on paper, "I'm sorry it hurt." Eli wrote back slowly. It was scary, but different. Jamal leaned closer. Different how? Eli closed his eyes, thinking, like, something moved inside my head. Jamal felt chills. Doctors came in and tested Eli. Soft vibrations, lights, signals. Eli frowned sometimes. Sometimes he smiled like he almost caught something. That night, Jamal slept in a chair near Eli's bed. No one told him to leave. Richard watched them from the door. A poor boy and a rich boy, connected by something money couldn't build. But someone else watched too. From the hallway, quiet, hidden. 2 days later, news broke. Mysterious device found in Millionaire's son's ear. Reporters crowded the hospital. Cameras flashed like lightning. Richard hated it. Someone wanted this quiet. Police questioned nurses, doctors, old caregivers, family workers. Everyone denied everything. But someone was lying. Jamal felt it. People looked at him strangely now. Some kind, some cold. One nurse whispered, "That boy shouldn't talk too much." Jamal told Richard. Richard's jaw tightened. "They're scared," Richard said. "That means we're close." That night, Jamal went to get water. The hall was empty. Footsteps followed him. He turned. No one. A hand grabbed his arm. He screamed. A janitor dropped his mop and ran. The hand disappeared. Jamal shook. Someone didn't want him alive. Richard moved Jamal to a private floor with security. "From now on," Richard said, "you don't go anywhere alone." Jamal nodded, scared. Eli was tested again. The doctor clapped softly behind him. Eli didn't react. Then, she tapped metal together. Eli's eyes twitched. Everyone froze. Again. Tap. Eli turned slightly. Richard covered his mouth with shaking hands. He felt it, the doctor whispered. Not clearly, but something. Jamal smiled wide. Eli looked at him, confused but happy. That night, Eli wrote, "Something is changing." Jamal wrote, "That's good." Eli wrote, "I think I heard a shadow." Jamal didn't know what that meant, but it made his chest hurt in a good way. 2 men in suits came to see Richard. They worked for the company that once handled Eli's infant care records. They said files were missing. Richard knew what that meant. Someone had cleaned their tracks. That night, Richard looked at old photos. Eli as a baby, nurses, helpers, family friends. One woman always close, too close. He stared at her face, trusted, smiling, always there. He felt sick, but he needed proof. Jamal overheard people arguing in the hallway. "He knows too much," a voice said. "Then make him quiet," another replied. Jamal ran back to Eli's room, heart beating fast. "Something bad is coming," he whispered. Eli didn't hear, but he felt Jamal shaking. He held Jamal's hand. Sometimes hands hear more than ears. The next morning, Jamal woke up to shouting. Police rushed past his door. A fire had started in the hospital's storage wing. Records burned. File is gone. Someone was erasing the past. Richard knew. This wasn't just about Eli. This was about power. And someone who never thought a poor boy would look close enough. Jamal looked at the flames through a window. "I just wanted to help," he whispered. And that was when he realized something. Helping had made him a target. And the story was far from over. The fire destroyed the old infant care logs, but not everything. One nurse, old and tired, came forward quietly. She asked for protection. She asked to see Richard. Her hands shook when she spoke. "I was told to never talk," she said, "but I can't die with this." She remembered the night Eli was born. A woman came in after hours. Not staff. Family. She watched the baby like he was a problem. She gave the nurse an envelope. Inside was more money than the nurse had ever seen. The woman said, "He must never hear." The nurse said she thought it was a joke. It wasn't. The woman had a small device. The nurse cried as she spoke. "I was young, scared, poor. I did what she said." Richard felt like his heart was being ripped apart. "Who was she?" he whispered. The nurse said the name. Someone close, someone trusted, someone who had smiled at Eli for years. Richard stood slowly. Jamal saw his face change. The kind of change that means a storm is coming. But they still needed proof. The nurse could disappear. The villain could run. That night, Jamal was almost taken again. A man tried to pull him into a car near the hospital exit. Security stopped him. The man had no ID, no reason to be there. He vanished into the city. Richard moved Jamal into his home, a mansion with gates and cameras. But Jamal slept with the light on. Eli stayed there too, recovering. Eli began reacting to vibrations, footsteps, doors, wind. He smiled when he felt them. Jamal clapped behind him softly. Eli turned. Not perfectly, but enough. Eli cried. Jamal cried too. Richard watched and broke. That night, Richard sat alone and looked at the name written on paper. The woman who had destroyed his son's life. The woman who still walked free. He whispered, "I trusted you." And the truth was coming for her. Soon, Eli began therapy every day. He wore new equipment. He learned to recognize vibrations as meaning. Doctors said his brain was waking up. The device had held him in silence. Now his mind was fighting back. Jamal stayed by his side. They laughed without sound. They spoke with hands. They shared snacks and drawings. Eli stopped drawing open mouths. He started drawing waves, sound he couldn't hear yet, but could feel coming. One night, Jamal overheard two guards. "She's leaving the country," one said. "Who?" "You know who." Jamal ran to Richard. "She's running," he said. Richard stood up slowly. "No," he said. "She thinks she is." The trap was set. They told the woman that police had nothing. They let her think she was safe. But someone followed her. Someone recorded her. Someone waited for her to talk. She met a man in a dark parking garage. She gave him money. She said, "The boy almost ruined everything." Those words were caught. Clear, sharp, deadly. Richard listened to the recording. His hands shook. "Arrest her," he said. But before police arrived, she vanished. The villain was gone. And so was the truth. For now. Eli stood at a window that night. Jamal stood beside him. Eli touched the glass and wrote on it with his finger. "I want to hear your voice one day." Jamal smiled sadly. "I want you to," he whispered. Eli couldn't hear, but one day he would. And when he did, the world would change for all of them. She didn't vanish by magic. She vanished because she had practiced disappearing her whole life. Private jets, fake names, quiet money. But power leaves fingerprints. Richard Carter used everything he had: lawyers, investigators, favors owed by men who never forgot his help. They traced her trail from Chicago to Miami, then to a small private airstrip outside Tampa. Her name was Grace Holloway. To the world, she was a family friend, a second aunt to Eli, always smiling, always present. To Richard now, she was the reason his son had lived in darkness. They moved fast. Police waited at the airstrip, cameras hidden, microphones ready. Grace arrived, wearing sunglasses and a white coat, calm as always. She smiled at the pilot, paid in cash. She didn't know she was already surrounded. As she walked toward the jet, a voice said, "Grace." She turned. Richard stood there. Her smile froze. "You shouldn't be here," she said softly. "You shouldn't have touched my son," Richard replied. Police stepped out. Grace's face changed, not fear. Anger. "You have no proof," she said. Richard lifted a phone and played the recording. "The boy almost ruined everything." Her own voice. Clear. Cold. Grace laughed once. "So what?" she said. "You're rich. You'll survive." Richard walked closer, his voice shaking. He was a baby. Grace's eyes hardened. "He wasn't supposed to matter," she said. "Your company, your fortune, your empire, those were supposed to be mine too." They arrested her there. Cameras flashed. The world watched. Back in Chicago, Jamal sat beside Eli watching the news with no sound. But they didn't need sound. They saw the truth. Eli touched the screen, then touched Jamal's hand. The villain was real, and she was caught. But one thing still scared everyone. Eli still couldn't hear. Not yet. Doctors warned Richard. Even after removing the device, damage could be permanent. Hope stayed dangerous. Eli worked harder than anyone. Therapy, every day. Exercises that made his head hurt. Machines that buzzed. Lights that flashed. Sometimes he cried. Sometimes he wanted to quit. Jamal never left his side. When Eli felt useless, Jamal made him laugh. When Eli felt broken, Jamal made him feel strong. One night, Eli wrote, "What if it never works?" Jamal wrote back, "Then we make a new way." That was when Richard made a decision. He told Jamal and his mother, "You're not going back to that life." Jamal's mother cried. Not because of the house, because for the first time, someone powerful cared about her son. They moved into a small house Richard bought, not a mansion, just safe. But safety has enemies. Grace Holloway had friends, people who didn't want her talking. One night, a car followed Jamal home. A rock came through a window. A note said, "Silence is expensive." Richard doubled security. But fear lived in Jamal now. He whispered to Eli, "Maybe I should go away." Eli grabbed his hand hard. "No." That's what his eyes said. The trial began. Grace sat calm in court, but witnesses came. The old nurse, the recording, security footage, money trails, the truth stacked high. The judge spoke. "You didn't just steal money. You stole a child's life." Grace didn't cry, but when she looked at Eli, something cracked. Not regret. Jealousy. The verdict came. Guilty. Sentenced for life. The courtroom exploded. Richard dropped to his knees, but his eyes weren't on Grace. They were on Eli. Because now, only one battle remained. Months passed. Then one morning, a doctor said something no one dared hope. "We think he might be ready." They fitted Eli with a new implant. Legal, safe, built to work with his healing nerves. The room was silent. Richard held Eli's hand. Jamal stood close. The doctor turned on the device. Nothing happened. Eli blinked. Then his face twisted. He grabbed Jamal's arm. His eyes filled with tears. Richard's heart stopped. "What do you feel?" the doctor asked slowly. Eli touched his ear, then his chest. Then he wrote with shaking hands, "Something is inside me." The doctor clapped softly. Eli gasped. His mouth opened. A sound came out. Not a word. A cry. A broken, beautiful cry. Richard screamed. Jamal fell to the floor crying. Eli cried because for the first time, he heard himself. Over weeks, sounds grew. Footsteps. Wind. Music. Eli learned words like a baby. Slow, clumsy, beautiful. One night, he looked at Jamal and said, "Yeah, Mo." Jamal froze, then smiled so hard it hurt. "Say it again." "Jamal." They hugged. Richard watched and whispered, "Thank you." The world heard their story. News shows, documentaries, schools taught it. But Jamal didn't want fame. He wanted Eli. Richard paid for Jamal's school. But Jamal worked harder than anyone. He said, "I don't want your money. I want your chance." Richard nodded. Years later, Eli stood on a stage. He told his story. He said, "A poor boy saved my life when rich people failed." The crowd stood. They clapped. And Eli heard every clap. In the front row, Jamal watched quietly. Eli pointed to him. "That's my brother," he said. And the world learned something simple. Power can buy noise, but only truth breaks silence. And sometimes, the smallest hands fix what power never could.